Hello, my name is Michael Salmony, and I'd like to welcome you to a new series which we're launching with ETPPA on all that is exciting in fintech. And we'll be interviewing some people in the fintech area and around, also including regulators and other parts of the ecosystem. But today I'd like to begin with the chair of ETPPA, who is Ralf. Welcome, Ralf. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how ETPPA started.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Yeah, well, ETPPA we created about 3 years ago, and but it goes back and it's representing what we call the bank independent TPPs as an industry representing association for third-party providers under PSD2. So that is the background, but it actually goes back a little bit longer to one day in February 2017 when we saw the first version of the RTS that on SCA and CSC that accompanied the PSD2, which has in our mind turned more or less everything that we thought we had agreed with PSD2 upside down. So me personally, I've been involved in this since 2012, which I think was the time when the EPC was trying to create an ETPPA, which was then challenged by a TPP. So this was then thrown over to the ECB, creating a multi-stakeholder team. At the time, I was running Safety Pay here in Europe and was on that table. And the discussions there, big round table with all the TPPs and other existing TPPs, but also other payment methods in Europe sitting around. And these discussions have then eventually led to the conclusion that PSD1 would have to be revised into PSD2. And then we saw all that happening, participated, of course, into the maximum possible in the drafting and suggestions, etc., discussions, trialogue, back and forth. We all know this took quite some time, but eventually, January 2018, it was enacted, and we had we were looking forward to this. But then, well, the EBA came out with this RTS, which, as I just said, I think turned everything upside down. And so there were, in the meantime, I was working for PPRO, an aggregator of payment methods around the world, also in Europe. And but together with many other fintechs, we there created what we called the Future of European Fintech Coalition. This was sort of an ad hoc thing. We had up to 75 members. To try and change that RTS. So this was our original mission. This is the history of it.
Thank you, Ralf. So so I'm taking away that because there were some regulations that the fintech industry wasn't too happy with, and maybe some positions of some other stakeholders weren't too good, you found it necessary to create a voice for the fintech industry. So we'll explore the contents of that in another video, what you weren't happy with. But just to continue more on the ETPPA organization, I understand it's been a real success so far. It was only created a few years ago, but now you are in dozens of Gremia and ECB and ERPB and everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit how your membership has developed and which Gremia you're working in?
Yeah, well, so I said initially this was this ad hoc fintech coalition that we had, and we were then, but because of course this was very much focused on third-party providers under PSD2, so AISPs and PISPs. So for the PISP part, we then got invited as a guest to the Euro Retail Payments Board, the ERPB, which the ECB is running and chairing, to take up the vacant seat that was foreseen for payment initiation service providers. So this was done initially as a guest, and it was one of the reasons why we saw the need to formalize our ad hoc coalition into a proper industry association representing the whole breadth of TPPs in Europe. And then that has then also led in turning that guest seat into a permanent seat at the ERPB. And so we were then also participating at all the ERPB working groups, in plenty of them, of course. There was still one on PSD2 at the time. There was instant payments, etc., instant payments at POI, all of that, SEPA API, what was called the original name, SEPA API Access Scheme initiative, also going back to the ERPB and the ECB. Whilst as you may know, I mean, many of these initiatives are starting there because it's the ERPP setting the scene or the strategy for what is being looked at and in terms of payments here in Europe. And once the ERPB working group has done sort of the more strategic way of it and coming up with recommendations on how to approach things, this is then when it's often handed over to the EPC for more concrete work, implementation of it, for example, Asset Inst, or now from the SEPA API into what's now called the SEPA Payment Account Access Scheme, SPA, and then, of course, participating in those EPC multi-stakeholder groups as well. And so this is quite some work there.
So that's really impressive. I mean, a lot of people will think you are just sort of representing a couple of PIS and AISs, maybe at the EPC, but you're actually in every single European gremium, even in some UK gremia. You're working on CBDC, on instant, on new payment schemes, on absolutely everything. That's really impressive. Can you just say a little bit more about the sort of membership that you have, and maybe also how you maybe want to develop that in future?
Yeah, well, we have currently around 30, above 30 direct members. We have some affiliations with other regional or domestic fintech associations, so there is quite a number of indirect memberships there. For that reason, we have at the time we created a three-tier type of membership. They're like the normal, we call it full membership, so this is the normal voting membership, and but we also thought at the time that in order to participate in all these fora, we need quite a number of people to represent us there. But then we also wanted to make sure that our representation is done fully in line with our values, with where we're coming from, with our initiative, what we want to achieve. So, which is why we have that created that executive membership, which allows any TPP, being bank independent, but to engage more and then participate here in those fora representing ETPPA. We also thought that it might be useful to open a dialogue and our membership for TPPs not so much bank independent, and for that we created the associate membership because we were foreseeing that very soon there will be many ASPSPs acting as TPPs and may also want to participate here, and that's what why we have this associate membership, which where the members have no voting right, but then there is also less cost to it. So we have the fees are therefore tiered into these three ways, but they're also tiered according to the size of the organization. So from micro, small, medium, large. So you end up with a grid of participation possibilities and fees staggered in this way.
That's very nice. I'm also getting a sense from a number of things you're saying. Some people think fintechs are the enemy of the banks, and I don't think that's really the case. You're working together with them in the SPA scheme. You have some of them as members, so of course, there's some conflicting interests sometimes, but you are the voice of the fintech industry, but you also want to make it work for everybody. And I think that's
quite many of our members are either partially bank owned or even fully bank owned, or dependent on banks, i.e., supplying banks, in particular on the AIS side. And so, yes, of course. So, but that's why we structured ourselves in a way that we can ensure that the bank independent view is what is guiding us and is what our policies, what determines our policies. So we're not getting, hijacked and going into a different direction.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think our time has roughly come to an end, but I think you've been very modest, because I know that you actually represent about 90% of the volume of TPP traffic going on. So you are actually absolutely the dominant voice of all fintechs across Europe.
Yeah, and maybe one word on that, because many people think that, open banking was invented in the UK. It was not. It was invented in mainland Europe 20 years ago. And so they may have invented the term, but we have done this business for almost 20 years, so some of our members. So we also have new TPPs, we have young and old, but for us, a lot of what we're doing is trying to make sure that that the services of very sophisticated products that have been in the market for a long time are continue to run. But I guess that is then where we're going to discussions on functionalities.
That's a very impressive experience you have in the stuff that is happening now. I mentioned already all the gremium events that you're part of, and also with 20 years of experience in previous pre-PSD2 open banking and API work. So that's super impressive. Thank you, Ralf. I think we've come to our end. I hope the viewers will continue to watch us when we delve more into the content, also what the future may be with open finance and open data, how the TPPs will position themselves there. So lots of exciting topics to explore, and look forward to seeing you there in future. And thank you again, Ralf, for this very insightful view.
Thank you.